Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, talking about the freaking pyramids again. When will it stop? Alright, so I was having a good time looking at these, right? Because as you know, we've been discussing this thing about the possibility that maybe if the SAR scan technology is indeed reliable and they did find something, some sort of structures underneath, we've all been trying to figure out if it's true that there is stuff in there. We wonder what it is, what can it be? And now clearly a lot of people went into the sci-fi aspect of this, like apparently there is this, well maybe not. Some people are going very architectural about this. I mean, this could be pretty cool. Look at that massive Anubis. Although then again, the sci-fi ones are my favorite. Do clip this, by the way. I hope that they find this. Would be. I am so excited for this to be dug. Now, given I have spoken about the conference at length on these two videos here, and as you know, I did not like the conference one bit. I think the three speakers were, Biondi was okay, but Armando Meli and Corrado Malanga, I think, are terrible speakers. Their conference was horrible. I don't care if people hate me. I tell you what I think. I do not care that it offends people. I watched the entire thing. It was extremely unprofessional, and particularly Corrado Malanga. I've been looking at some of the stuff he said online, and not credible. Not credible. In my humble opinion, of course. With that being said, that doesn't mean that now I'm going to say that there is absolutely nothing under the pyramids given. I don't think this is the most likely possibility. But once again, if you dig, and there are these pillars that perhaps are made of titanium with glass spiraling around them, glowing energy, I would love it. I would love it. I really hope that that's what it is. It's just that I'm trying to apply Occam razor in this situation. Now, I have said multiple times that Occam razor is not a perfect tool or device. The idea that the simplest explanation is the most likely, maybe not. Maybe it's not one. Sometimes the Occam razor fails, that the most complex explanation was the correct one. We do have to at least try and apply it for intellectual honesty. And the idea that the pyramids were some sort of power plants, or they were used like this, for instance, like this is all great, but it is not likely. It's not probable. It's possible, but not probable. Because I can't debunk the idea that maybe aliens visited us. Who the heck knows? But it is not likely. So my opinion is, in this situation for this video, before new evidence comes out, then we could start discussing more about the sci-fi stuff. Perhaps the science fiction, and maybe we get to remove fiction for some of the science fiction. I would love that. But before we do that, in light of the fact that we're still waiting on the actual excavations, let's try and apply Occam razor and come with an idea, with an hypothesis that it's a bit more believable than what the Corrado Malanga and Armando Meli stated, that could still make logical sense, assuming that there is, in fact, something underneath. So to make my position clear, Malanga believes this is aliens. They seem to also believe that these are pillars that were built to support the structure, but then they also believe that it's the city of the dead, Amenti, underneath in there. This is their statement. That's what they believe they have found. But they don't know if that's what they found, because when you look at the scans, particularly, let's see if I can find the pillar one. Pillars. When you look at the actual scans, and they kind of look like elongated, and they're like, oh, these could be the pillars. Here they are. It's not like it's telling you what it is. This is still an interpretation. I am willing, for now, to remove all skepticism just for the sake of argumentation and say, yes, there is something in there. And I'm also willing to go a step further and say, this stuff is not natural. It's man-made. It's artificial. In my opinion, it's probably a mix of both. But let's just, it's limestone underneath, and we do know that there are cave systems that do occur naturally inside limestone. But let's say that, yeah, some of this does look like maybe it is man-made. So let's, for the sake of argument, say that this is artificial. Before we say, however, that these are pillars with glass spiral cases that create maybe energy for an underground power plant that connects to the realm of the dead and all of this kind of stuff, or that it's used to support the weight of the pyramid, how about we consider the possibility that maybe these were mines? Let me expand on that. In the history of mankind, we don't have any situation that we can point at where we have massive 1.2 kilometers of depth pillars used as support structures for megalithic, pyramid-like architecture. We don't have that. And even more so, we don't have that with high advanced technology, of course. We can't point to it. However, what we can point to is extremely deep mining systems. For instance, this is a list of the deepest mines in the world. A lot of these are in South Africa, some are in America, India, Canada, and you see 4 kilometers. So this is twice as deep. And compared to this, 648 meters and then 1.2 kilometers, so 1,200 meters underneath, as the findings show, wouldn't be so crazy to believe, because we have something that is 4 kilometers, 3.9 kilometers, 3.7 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers, 3,000 kilometers. We have a lot of these very deep mines. Oftentimes they're gold, sometimes they're uranium, copper, and that sort of situation. Now, the idea behind this hypothesis, the way I would support it that I'm presenting here, is that the concept of digging a mine underneath and creating a complex exactly under what you're trying to build has been done. For instance, the ancient Romans did this in ancient Paris. So Paris was a Gallic town. It belonged to the Gauls and it was called Parisi. And what the Romans did, as they controlled that area, they changed the name to Letitia, and then they started digging underneath, creating underground mines that were used to collect the limestone, put a pin on that, to then continue the expansion above ground of the rest of the town, which is how they did it. And this was not uncommon in the ancient world. They did that. And in fact, the catacombs of Paris, the underground massive labyrinth that I have covered on a dedicated video, you'll find a link in the description, well, some of these holes and some of these shafts are in fact former ancient Roman mines that are still under there, and they can go down up to even 200 meters below ground zero. The Romans were famous, or should we say infamous, for their mining projects all over the place, the Roman Empire, in fact the Republic, even in Britannia, for instance, they did a lot of mining operations in order to then use those stones to build the settlements, because again, the Romans built in stone, which was one of the main differences between how their sort of architecture and the architecture of the, for example, Celtic tribes, which instead tended to predominantly use wood, not only wood, but obviously the Romans were the ones that were extensively building with stone. This is a 1908 map of the mining operation and exploitation of a lot of underground sections of Paris. And again, some of these go back to the 5th century, to the 6th century, and even earlier than that. And some of these go back to ancient Rome. Now, the Roman settlement of Lutetia was expanded through limestone, because that's the kind of rock that was found, together with other types, but this was the main one. And we do know that limestone is indeed what's underneath the pyramids of Giza, and it is one of the main components of the millions of blocks that are used to actually build the core of the pyramids. So, in other words, is it possible that all of these pretty colors do represent man-made structures, considering the fact that some of these are in fact hollow? We have been told these are not columns. They call them pillars, but they did say during the conference that they are hollow inside. So is it possible that these are mine shafts that extend all the way deep in order to collect the stones and then bring them up with some sort of system so that they would collect the raw materials in loco? Now, given this is not a perfect answer, I do understand that we know of open quarries that are not too far from the pyramids that are being used, and we like quarry pits, and we also know that some stones were transported from other locations in Egypt. With that being said, though, that doesn't necessarily exclude the possibility that they also, at the same time, considering the number of blocks in the millions that they needed in order to do this, who knows, maybe they did also get some of that raw material directly from underneath the pyramids. Now, to try and now attack my own hypothesis to see if we can find holes in it, or to also kind of assess how valid it could be, one critique could be the idea that maybe this would make it more fragile. Could things collapse? Now, on one hand, sure, but then again, if these skunks are real, they do have these shafts in it, and it didn't collapse. So these empty areas exist, if the skunks are to be believed. So at this point, we're just trying to explain what they could be. And do keep in mind that limestone mines, as I was saying, still exist under Paris. One example will be under the Cochin Hospital in the 14th arrondissement, and it still exists today. It didn't collapse. Now, given some of those under structures had to be reinforced later with walls, but maybe these were built with walls around it, we'll have to see. Maybe, only maybe, that spiral thing that they say they see perhaps is part of the system used to move the raw stone before it was being prepared. All in all, this is just an idea, just a little hypothesis that I wanted to throw in there. I'm not saying that I know the answer. I'm not even saying that there is something underneath, but at the same time, I'm not saying that there isn't. What I am saying is, dig. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.